sister who's a math teacher? And I paused. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. Tell me your name, and I'll tell her you said hello. Now, Eli, look at the difference 10 years has made.
Of course.
And now, one of the reasons I out myself so quickly with people doing this work is because they look at me and they go, wait a minute, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
You have a wife and 2 kids. Why do you care what the LGBT community wants?
Right.
And I learned very quickly to just turn them and go, actually, I'm a queer-identified trans man.
Mm-hmm.
Now can we talk? Like, I have to justify, well, I'm not homeless, but I stand up for homeless people.
Yeah.
I'm not black, but I believe that black students have a right to a great education.
Right.
I don't have to be homeless to help the homeless, but this idea that I have to be queer to help the queer community still strikes me.
Well, when it comes to the queer communities and the way that I believe that cis straight people very often, especially those that don't have any family members or close friends that are queer, is it's still that guilt by association. Like you said, why
Right.
would you do this? Because you know that people are going to assume that you're gay. Why are you doing this unless you are gay or unless you
Right.
are trans?
Right.
No.
And then we can fire your butt.
Right. Exactly.
Because guilt by association, well, in this state, if you're not gay, well, then you're standing up for gay people and we're going to fire you anyway because it's a right-to-work state.
Right, of course. Yeah. So let's talk about Pride School Atlanta.
Sure.
So what for those of us and if you're living in the Atlanta area and you haven't heard of Pride School Atlanta, no offense, but I believe you might have been under a rock for the last little bit. But and we'll get to some of the publicity that you have had on this for a while. But can you tell our listeners what is the mission of Pride School Atlanta? What is it? What does it mean to you? What is the purpose of what you are trying to do?
Well, that's a great question. I will tell you, I wrote the mission statement for Pride School Atlanta the very first night I thought about this school. And this school came out of a desire to have a school where queer and trans and allied educators can freely teach queer and trans and allied youth and families without hedging who they are, who they've been, or who they plan to become, and who their family members are, and who their loved ones are. And the great part is that the person who had told me, I'm not comfortable with you being out as trans, said, and I said, look, my dream school is to do this. And she said, why don't you start that school? And the mission was born that night. Wow. And the mission of Pride School Atlanta, I mean, when you take it from somebody who just started their dream school, who was told, why don't you quit trying to fix other people's schools and start your own? Right. And she did. And she started with like 8 kids, and 3 of them were her own.
No.
And now it has 65 people or something like that, and they're in their 4th year. Mm-hmm. The mission of Pride School Atlanta is to create a community, a forever growing community of LGBT, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, and allied students, educators, and families, where every family is welcome and every educator may teach so that every student may learn.
Great. That's awesome.
And that's really the mission. And the gift is that we have become threefold, because I think the hidden mission is that we want to be Googleable.
Right.
The other part of our mission, and that's why the name Pride School was the first name that came to mind for me, and it's stuck. And we call it Pride School Atlanta because this is Atlanta. Now, what about the other 200 sites we can have across the country and around the world? Because we think these schools belong everywhere until there's not a need for them.
Okay.
And we're a nonprofit school. We're here to just make a decent salary and support the community. And when we say allies, we mean anybody. Anybody who wants to hang with really cool people and get a great individualized education that's based, it's almost like college for kids, where you actually have choice. It's a democratic free school. It's the model we've chosen for our campus, if you will, where you decide where you're at in your learning and what drives your learning and what do you need to catch up on. What do you want to catch up on? Where are you? And so many of our kids have lost school. They've lost years of schooling because of bullying. It's a school for anybody who's sick of having a target on their back or doesn't want to put one there in the first place on themselves or on their kids. And we have so many kids, like I said, who have anxiety, who have lost time from school due to their anxiety issues and due to PTSD and due to the bullying and due to having to move schools because of bullying and because of discriminatory practices. And so the first thing parents ask is, well, they're 15, but they're coming 3 years behind. I say, there's no such thing. There's really no such thing as behind. There are people who are 65 who can't read and write.
Right.
They're ahead of the curve. These kids can all read and write. And I will share with you that the biggest reason that we do the media work, the biggest reasons is really two. One is to find donors, but the biggest reason is to find families. And so that every family. Yeah. Right. And so when the moment we formed, the Georgia Voice found us. We got in a little blurb. We actually got our first article in the Georgia Voice in, I think, June of 2014. LGBT youth in Atlanta, our issue. And one by one, we've hit all the news organizations around the area. And not just around the area. Like, news of this all around the world has been covered by The Advocate, MTV, LA Times, among many others. Perez Hilton picked up the story. Perez Hilton. I had a feeling that you were going to bring up Perez Hilton. But, all of these national and local news sources, does this feel a little surreal? I knew the bubble was going to pop, and I didn't know when, and I didn't know how, and I didn't know where. And I swear to you, just as we sat back and said, we were going to try to launch in January. We really don't have any money. We don't have any students. Educators come out of the woodwork every time we have a showing, and they go, oh, my God, please can I work for you? Right. And then we've had 2 interested families. And I could just have 5,000 students for all the educators that want to work for us. Well, and it's interesting because when I first heard about Pride School, right, and I started looking at it, anytime you hear, and I would venture to guess that a majority of the people that hear about what you're doing, the first thought in their head, if they agree with what you're doing, is, God, what a great place for these kids to be able to grow up, in an accepting and loving environment without being surrounded by the bullying that can come from being different in that way. Or if they have maybe even a parent that is queer, they don't have to worry about other kids teasing them. What is secondary that I think is just as important is what a great place for queer educators to be able to go and be able to teach and pass on their knowledge and their experience, not only of textbooks, but of life, and to not be worried that any minute somebody's going to say something or somebody's going to find out, or you're going to get spotted in a grocery store by one of your parents, and have to explain. Partner. Right, and I have to explain that this is my sister or this is my brother or, oh, no, this is just a friend or whatever the case may be, and play the pronoun game constantly. Years upon years, I knew educators that now knowing that they are identified as usually gay or lesbian, and all those years that I wondered because I, in high school, identified as a lesbian and was really kind of isolated in a very, very large high school in Alabama. I wondered which ones were the ones, and when they play the pronoun game, I was like, man, I've played this game, and I'm a professional. And I really think we're playing for the same team here.
So can we really talk? But you can't approach an educator like that, and an educator, especially in the South, can't approach a student like that without running the risk of losing a job and upsetting a parent. So I just think it's interesting that, you know, it was something that, you know, I was doing all this reading about Pride School, you know, when you and I first started talking about it, and I was just, it was like a light bulb that was like, well, duh, I know that. But it just kind of hit me how this is not just about the students. This is about the teachers as well, and better teachers are going to be better for the students anyway.
Exactly. And this, I will tell you, as you know, this is not a new idea to have a queer-affirming school. About 7 years ago, right after my daughter was born, there's a gentleman who's actually Jewish and not queer-identified, but he gets it, who's tried to start, his name is Dave Glick, and he tried to start in Minneapolis this GLBTQonlinehighschool.com.
Okay.
A queer-affirming, LGBT-affirming online school for kids from all over the world or all over the country who wanted to complete their education. It's because so many are homeschooled, right?
Right.
Because they got sick of the drama. They couldn't do it anymore. They're too anxious, whatever, right? They gave up on the system. And unfortunately, it never fully launched, but I got to apply to this school, and filling out the job application was a spiritual experience.
Right.
Because the first thing it said was, what is your name? What are your pronoun preferences? How do you identify? And it gave a list of 12. How do you identify? I gave another list of 12 and other. Both of them said 12 and other. You know, gender identity, sexual orientation. If you choose to answer these questions, you know, it had the word cisgender on it. And, I mean, have you ever seen a job application with the word cisgender on it?
No.
Right. And and so our job application, I've stayed in touch with him, and the school ended up being mothballed because it's not accredited yet, and you have to have 2 years to get accredited, but you can't get students without being accredited, da-da-da-da-da. But it changed my life.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you, I went from going, well, you know, I got to get home to my kid, to here are the 12 different things I could do for this community.
Right.
And you know, if you saw the list of people that he chose to hire, it was all the heavy-duty activists, and Lincoln, I think, who's the attorney or whatever, and CJ that was with Glisten or something in D.C., was like student, I forget, CJ who was gender queer, and these other people, just rock stars, you know? And I was just like, okay, we're doing this. Now it's our turn.
Right. Yeah.
And I believe in doing ages 5 to 18 because we had parents come to us with their 4-year-olds. And my 4-year-old, by the way, as I said, being gender fluid, was born with one name and prefers this feminine name some or most of the time now. And we actually ended up going back to that original little private school so that we didn't have to deal with the bathroom issue at the local elementary school, which they said, well, okay, fine, he can use whatever bathroom he wants, but we'll deal with the bathroom when he's older. And I was like,
You know it's coming. Yeah.
You and the horse you rode in on, we're not staying for that. It was a nice attempt, but now we have kids who are 8 years old out in Gwinnett County and other Cherokee County, Cobb County, Clayton County, who are they're losing their recess because they're using the bathroom with which they identify. They're getting detention. They're being threatened to be suspended because the 8-year-olds are using the bathroom. And the gift, Eli, is that this all has come to me because we're searchable. Because when you Google LGBT, like Youth Atlanta or LGBT, you know, whatever, you find us.
Right.
And people reach out to us, so we've become we formed a nonprofit, Pride School Atlanta Incorporated, knowing we would be doing more than a school, but so we educate, connect, and support. We educate people out in the community. We've done all kinds of trainings, even including the Urban League. We got invited by the State Department to talk to a South Asian delegation about our work in the interest of advancing human rights. That was amazing. We sat on a panel with WPATH addressing their medical providers who had come in for the training in Atlanta.